one of the more important things that has happened in the UFC since the last time we talked is Brian Ortega versus Alexander Volkanovski is happening. Unfortunately, Alexander Volkanovski flew all the way to the United States, went to Vegas, and ended up catching COVID. So at that point, the fight was rescheduled. Brian Ortega was always the challenger. But now there's a caveat that's involved between these two fighters going at it. The UFC has announced that Brian Ortega and Alexander Volkanovski are both going to be the tough coaches. Now, there's a bunch of different interesting facts that go into this decision. First of all, a lot of people were talking about Jorge Masvidal and Kamaru Usman being the tough coaches. There was a lot of mention that they wanted 170 pounders in the tough TV show. So we know the answer to that. We've talked about it before. Masvidal and Kamaru Usman are going to be fighting sometime soon in front of a packed stadium. So we know that they're going to be fighting, and we kind of know the reason why. And I believe the reason is because the UFC needed someone to headline that packed show, first of all, that sold out in a couple minutes, by the way. And two people that can live up to the first show that the UFC is coming back to with fans involved. We needed a duo. We needed some people that would fight each other, that would, that would make sense as the first show for the UFC when coming back to this packed stadium. The card that Kamaru Usman and Masvidal they're on, I mean, that card is packed as well, and you can't have a fighter or two fighters on top of that card that don't make sense to be there. So that was the reason why this decision was made. And the speculations that were going into this on who's going to be the tough coaches, it was going crazy. At one point, it was almost confirmed that Masvidal and Kamaru Usman were going to be the coaches. But I guess that doesn't happen. And I think it's the right decision because you need some headlining fighters to be on top of that card that's coming up. Now, where does this leave us with Brian Ortega and Alexander Volkanovski? The tough part about this, no pun intended, is that they were supposed to fight already. This fight was already supposed to happen. And now they have to wait even longer to fight each other. Some people are speculating that this fight could happen in December, which is a very long time when you were getting ready for this fight just a little while ago. You have to fly all the way back, being Alexander Volkanovski. I bet you he has to be in the States for a little while. He's going to be outside of the training zone that he has in Australia. This is going to be a very weird situation for him. Now, the question that I want to ask on top of all of this is why these two? I think that not a lot of people want to do the tough TV show. And not a lot of people are interested in what that show brings. Now, the UFC has a lot of nostalgia that goes into that show. They just want people to keep watching it because that was one of the main catalysts on why the UFC exploded the way it did. I mean, the fight that everybody talked about was Bonner versus Griffin was the tough championship fight. So I think there's a lot of nostalgia factors that go into it. Right now during COVID, there are there are not that many ways to get new fighters involved. We see a lot of these cuts that are happening in the UFC, but we don't see a lot of new fighters joining the UFC. We've seen a couple here and there, and some really exciting prospects that have joined the UFC. But there's no real way, while all of these smaller shows are closed, to get new fighters involved in the UFC. Now, we do have that Dana White Looking for a Contender TV show, but while that's on its while it's off for a little bit, we have this Tough TV show. I think that's one of the reasons why. Another thing, like I mentioned before, not a lot of people want to join Tough anymore. They don't want to spend that much time involved in the production of the TV show. Just look at this fight as an example. These two fighters are out of competition for a little while now. Now, I don't know what the compensation is going to look like for this. Is it good enough to keep them afloat while they're not fighting? Because even though they could have all these small side businesses and all this kind of stuff, their main bread and butter for these two fighters is fighting. So I think the importance level as well, there could be some other fighters that want to get involved in the Tough TV show, but they're not at the highest level. Now, when I say people are not interested in joining the Tough TV show as coaches, it's because they've reached some astronomical level. Those people are not interested at all. The people that want to stay active are not interested. So you have these two who are willing to do it, and they're going to be fighting for a championship fight sometime soon. So, I mean, a lot of things aligned for this. Unfortunately, we couldn't see the Masvidal and Kamaru Usman as the coaches, but I say unfortunately, but I think this is actually a great thing for the UFC. They made a really good decision, and having those two headline the first card for the fans to come back to. So that's Brian Ortega and Alexander Volkanovski. Let's go on to the next topic.